The day my daughter, Jessica, screamed those words at me, "Pay the rent or get out," was the day I truly learned what betrayal feels like. The sound wasn't loud, it was quiet, cold and precise, like a scalpel. She stood on the porch I'd built with my own hands, in the house where I'd raised her, and she evicted me. She thought it was over. She thought the old man was defeated, shuffling off to some rented room to die quietly, leaving her the only thing of value I had left, my home. What she didn't know was that I wasn't going to a rented room. I was going to a lawyer's office. And 1 week later, with a signature that took less than a second, I sold our family home out from under her. The look on her face when the new owner's real estate agent knocked on her door, holding a formal notice to vacate and a request for her security deposit. I wish I could say I didn't watch, but I did. From my car down the street, I saw the color drain from her face, saw her perfect, composed world crack right down the middle. That was the first taste of my revenge. But that wasn't where it started. To understand how a father and daughter end up there, you have to go back to the world before the fire. My name is Clay. For 32 years, I was a history teacher at Roosevelt High. My world wasn't big, but it was solid. It was built on my wife, Marie, and our daughter, Jessica. This house, a modest 3-bedroom craftsman in a neighborhood of old oaks, was our kingdom. Every scar on the hardwood floor had a story. The notch on the doorframe marked Jessica's height each birthday until she was 18. This was my life's work, not my job. Marie passed 5 years ago. Cancer. It wasn't a battle, it was a theft. After she was gone, the house got quieter, but Jessica and we held on, or I thought we did. She was struggling, a series of boutique manager jobs that never lasted, a lifestyle on social media that always seemed just out of her financial reach. When her latest relationship ended, she asked to move back home. "Just for a little while, Dad, to get back on my feet." My heart, so full of empty space, leapt at the chance. My girl was coming home. That first month was a balm. We had dinners. I helped her update her resume at the old kitchen table. I gave her space, taking the smaller guest room so she could have the master suite. "It's brighter in here," I'd said. She'd hugged me. I felt like a father again. I thought I was giving her a safe harbor. I didn't realize I was handing her the keys to the kingdom and showing her where all the treasure was buried. The first sign was subtle. Jessica started talking about the house like it was a problem to be solved. "This wiring is so old, Dad, a liability. The property taxes here are insane for what you get. You know, with the market this hot, you could make a fortune." I'd laugh it off. "This old place, it's not going anywhere, Jess. It's home." She'd smile, but it didn't reach her eyes anymore. The warmth between us began to cool, replaced by a strange transactional tension. She began referring to her living here as managing the property for me. Then one evening, she laid a printed spreadsheet on the table. "Look, Dad, I've crunched the numbers. With the current rental value of a house this size in this area, and factoring in utilities, upkeep, and the premium for a furnished room, your share comes to $1,800 a month." I stared at the paper, then at her. "My share? For rent, Dad, it's only fair. I'm taking on all the household management. It's a lot of work." The room tilted. I felt a crack open up in the foundation of my world. This was my house, Marie's and my house. We'd paid off the mortgage the year Jessica graduated college. "Jessica," I said, my voice thin, "this is my house." Her expression hardened, just a fraction. "It's an asset, Dad, and assets should be leveraged efficiently. Consider it a life lesson. Nothing's free." I paid her. I wrote the check each month, my hand shaking with a humiliation so deep I couldn't name it. I told myself it was temporary. She was finding her way. She was my daughter. I was so busy trying to be a good father, I didn't see I was being turned into a tenant, and the rent was just the beginning. The betrayal didn't come with a shout. It came with a text. It was a Tuesday. I'd just gotten home from my weekly volunteer stint at the library. On the kitchen counter, next to the fruit bowl Marie had loved, was a single sheet of paper, formal letterhead. At the top, it read, "Notice to pay rent or quit." My blood turned to ice. I scanned the document. It stated I was in arrears for 2 months' rent, totaling $3,600. It gave me 72 hours to pay in full or vacate the premises. It was signed by Jessica, but below her signature, typed, was a new name, Darian Finch, property manager. Who was Darian Finch? I found Jessica in the living room on her laptop. "Jessica, what is this?" She didn't look up. "It's what it looks like, Dad. You're behind. Rules are rules." "I'm not behind. I gave you a check last week. It's in my ledger." The check bounced, Clay. She finally looked at me, and her eyes were flat, the eyes of a stranger behind a counter. "Insufficient funds. My bank charged me a fee. That's why the total is higher." It was a lie, a perfect weaponized lie. My pension was direct deposited. The money was there. I knew it. She knew it. "This is my house," I said, the words feeling weak and stupid. She stood up, closing her laptop with a sharp click. "It's the house, and you are a tenant in violation of the lease." She walked past me to the front door, holding it open. The autumn air rushed in. "You have 3 days. Pay in full or pack your things." Her voice was calm, administrative. "I'd appreciate it if you left now. I have a potential new tenant coming by for reviewing in an hour." I stood there on the porch I'd rebuilt after the big storm of '99, the wood still bearing the faint scars from Jessica's first bicycle. She stood in the doorway, a silhouette against the warm light of the home she was stealing. "Jessica, please, you're my daughter." For a second, something flickered in her face, not regret, but impatience. Then it was gone, sealed over by a wall of cold resolve. Her voice dropped, low and final. "Just pay the rent, Dad, or get out." She closed the door. The lock clicked, a sound as final as a coffin lid. I stood on the porch in the gathering dusk. The humiliation burned away, leaving something else in its wake, a clean, cold, and absolute clarity. That was the night I stopped being a father trying to fix things. I became a man with a single purpose. She didn't just burn my life, she forged my resolve. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the sterile quiet of the Fairview Motel, room 114, and I planned. The grief was a luxury I couldn't afford. The tears were over. Now I needed the blueprint. My first move wasn't emotional, it was forensic. At dawn, I went to the county recorder's office. I needed to see the deed. My name, Clayton Joseph Vance, was right there, sole owner, no liens, no co-signers. Relief, cold and sharp, flooded me. She hadn't forged anything yet. The house was still legally, incontestably mine. But she had created a paper trail of her own. I pulled every document I could find. There was no formal lease, of course, but there were her spreadsheets, her text messages demanding rent, the bounced check notice. She was building a narrative of a tenant-landlord relationship. It was flimsy, but in the messy court of family drama, it might have been enough to confuse a judge, especially with her new property manager in her ear. Darian Finch. Who was he? A local real estate strategist and influencer. His social media was a gallery of selfies in front of luxury cars and half-finished flip houses, captioned about asset optimization and cutting emotional ties to dead equity. My stomach turned. This was the poison he dripped into my daughter's ear. My home was dead equity. I was the emotional tie to be cut. I realized then this wasn't just Jessica's greed. It was a coordinated takeover, and Darian was the architect. I needed a lawyer, but not a local family mediator. I needed a shark. I found Celia Thorne online. Her firm specialized in property and elder law. Her tagline was, "Protecting what's yours." I called her. In her quiet, book-lined office 2 towns over, I laid it out. The house, Jessica, the fake rent, Darian, the eviction notice. Celia listened, her expression unreadable. When she finished, she leaned forward. "Mr. Vance, what is your goal? Do you want her out? A formal apology? Financial restitution?" I looked out her window at the solid brick buildings of a town that still looked like it had a moral center. "I want my house back, entirely. I want her out, and I want her to understand in a way she can never forget that she doesn't get to steal from me." Celia nodded slowly. "Then we don't fight her eviction, we use it." Her plan was elegant and brutal. "The house is yours. You can sell it tomorrow if you wish. Selling it would render her so-called lease and her authority as manager null and..." A plan crystallized in my mind, cold and perfect. I wouldn't just sell it. I would sell it to someone who would be the opposite of everything Jessica and Darian represented. Not a flipper, not a developer. I would find a buyer who wanted a home. I put the word out through trusted old connections. Fellow teachers, the librarian, the guys at the hardware store. I was looking for a quiet, private sale to a family. The response was immediate. The market was starving for a move-in-ready house in a good neighborhood. But then, the backfire. Jessica found out. One of the potential buyers I'd discreetly shown the house to must have mentioned it. She stormed into the Fairview Motel lobby, Darian trailing behind her like a slick shadow. "How dare you?" she hissed, her voice trembling with a rage I'd never seen. "You're trying to sell my house out from under me? That's illegal. I have rights." Darian stepped forward, putting a placating hand on her arm. "Now, Clay, can I call you Clay? This is a misunderstanding. Jessica has invested considerable time and capital into managing and upgrading this property. She has equitable interest. Any sale would have to go through her, and frankly, her valuation is significantly higher than what you'll get from some retiree. We have investors lined up who see the real potential." He slid a business card across the front desk. "Let's talk. We can make this a win-win. A structured buyout that honors Jessica's contribution." I looked from his smug face to Jessica's furious one. She wasn't apologizing. She was negotiating for a cut of what was already hers in her mind. Any last flicker of hope inside me died. I picked up his card. I didn't tear it. I just set it back down, precisely in front of him. "There's no we," I said, my voice quiet. "You have no interest, legal or equitable. You have 60 days to vacate my property. The clock is ticking." The look on their faces, the shock that I wasn't rolling over, that I knew the law, was better than any shouted argument. They left, sputtering threats about lawyers. But their threat gave me an idea. They had investors? So did I. I made one phone call to the one person I knew who had the money, the heart, and the perfect reason to want that house, and I set the final piece of my trap. The sale moved with a speed that felt surreal. My buyer was Miriam, the widow of my old friend and fellow teacher, Ben. They'd always loved our house, our street. Ben had passed 2 years ago, and Miriam was rattling around in a townhouse her kids hated. She had the cash from Ben's life insurance. She wanted a garden. She wanted a porch. She wanted a home with good memories already in the walls. "Are you sure, Clay?" she asked, her kind eyes worried. "It's your home." It was. Now I wanted to be someone's who love it, and I need it to be you. We used Celia for the sale. The contract was ironclad, all cash, as is, quick close. And per my specific, non-negotiable stipulation, the buyer would take formal, legal possession immediately upon closing and would personally serve the sitting occupant, Jessica Vance, with a 60-day notice to vacate on the day of closing. The closing was at 9 a.m. in a title company office. I signed my name for the last time as owner of 421 Briarwood Lane. It took less than 30 seconds. The weight that lifted wasn't grief. It was the weight of a weapon I'd finally used. At 10:15 a.m., as planned, Miriam's real estate agent, a no-nonsense woman named Gail, knocked on the front door of my old house. Jessica answered, probably expecting a delivery or another of Darian's investor friends. Gail handed her 2 envelopes. "Good morning. I'm Gail Simmons. I'm here on behalf of the new owner of this property. This is your official notice to vacate within 60 days, and this is a request for your forwarding address for the return of your security deposit once the premises have been inspected for damage." I watched it all from my car, parked just down the street under the shade of the big oak. I saw Jessica's face, the confusion, then the slow, dawning horror as she read the notice. She looked up at Gail, her mouth moving, but no sound came out. She looked at the paper again, her hands beginning to shake. She stumbled back inside, slamming the door. 10 minutes later, Darian's black SUV screeched to a halt at the curb. He rushed inside. The drama was contained behind the front door, but I could imagine the panic, the screaming, the realization that their asset was gone, that their game was over, that the old man had not been defeated. He had simply moved the battlefield and won. My phone buzzed. It was Jessica. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again and again. Then the texts started. "Jessica, Dad, what have you done? You can't do this. I'll fight this. I have rights. Call me. We need to talk. This is insane. You're throwing your own daughter out on the street? What is wrong with you?" I didn't respond. The silence was my answer. The sale was my answer. The moving truck that would eventually come for her things would be my answer. The final scene came a week later. I was at Miriam's new apartment, helping her pack a box of books. My phone rang. A private number. I answered. It was Darian. His smooth, strategic voice was replaced by a ragged, angry edge. "You think you're clever, old man? You wrecked her, you know that? She's a mess. All you've done is create a huge, expensive legal problem for yourself. We are suing you for wrongful eviction and intentional infliction of emotional distress. You'll be buried in legal fees. You'll lose everything in court." I waited for him to finish. I could hear Jessica crying in the background. "Darian," I said, calmly, "you're not a property manager. You're a trespasser in my daughter's life. The lawsuit you're describing, it's called a SLAP suit, strategic lawsuit on public participation. It's meant to silence and bankrupt people. My lawyer, Celia Thorne, is very familiar with them. She's drawing up the countersuit for fraud and malicious prosecution right now. It will name you personally. How will that look for your strategist brand?" The silence on the other end was profound. I'd done my homework. "Tell Jessica," I continued, my voice finally cracking with the strain of it all, "that her security deposit will be mailed to her, and tell her her mother would be ashamed of her." I hung up. They never filed a suit. I live in a small, bright apartment now. It has no notches in the doorframe. The floors have no scars. It's quiet. Sometimes the quiet is peaceful. Sometimes it's just empty. Miriam sends me pictures of the peonies blooming, of a new swing on the porch. She had the old oak tree professionally trimmed, not cut down. She understood. The house is loved. It's a home again, not an asset. I saw Jessica once from a distance, loading the last of her things into a U-Haul. Darian wasn't there. She looked smaller. The victory I thought I'd feel wasn't there. Just a deep, weary sadness. Revenge doesn't fix the pain. It doesn't bring back your daughter. It just measures the distance she chose to put between you and makes it permanent. She taught me the hardest lesson, that love can be conditional even from your own child, and that sometimes protecting what's left of your heart means building a wall where a door used to be. Revenge doesn't fix pain, it measures it. It draws a line in the sand and says, you can't cross this again. My line was the property line of 421 Briarwood Lane. What would you have done? Would you have sold? Would you have fought to keep her close, even as she stole from you? Let me know in the comments. I read every one. This was a story about a house, a daughter, and the price of betrayal. I'm Zach. Remember, justice always finds its way.